It happens to me as a father, because what I always tell my sons is, or any young people their age, but particularly my sons, I always say, do really stupid things right now, because the fact of the matter is, when you get to our age, all we do is sit around telling each other stories about the stupid things we did when we were your age. So if you haven't got a few really good ones to tell, you're going to feel really left out later on. And
That's so true.
I agree also that, print the legend. I mean, I think that's the story. We'd all rather be legends in the end, and why not? I mean, especially where it comes to the outer cave.
When you're doing a biography, David, you're interviewing people and they're telling stories. And how do you determine whether the stories they're telling you are embellished the way we're, talking about, or are you triangulating, or what are you doing to get as close to what actually happened as you can?
First of all, you're going to interview the oldest people you can find first, because by the time you're done, they won't be around.
Right.
And that's really true. And also, the older and clearer, if someone's clear as they are older, just as Ray just mentioned about telling stories, you're actually in a much more garrulous and fine-tuned part of your life as far as storytelling goes. And yes, it can get exaggerated, but I think what you're listening for is the essence of a truth that you haven't heard before. In other words, I think taking it literally, you don't take it with a grain of salt, but I think taking anybody's story literally by detail by detail is a huge beginner's, sort of a rookie's mistake. I think you're confirming and listening for, oh, that was the kind of person she really was, or that sort of behavior I've seen in other parts of this story. I can see why that now is occurring here. So it just keeps opening out it unfolds another part of the origami.
So it really is like a poker skill, because that's the precise poker skill, which is someone is telling a story and you're looking to make sure that it's consistent and that it makes sense.
Right.
And if it doesn't, if there's something that just strikes you as odd about it, then you may decide that it's not reliable.
Well, the thing about biography is that if you do have a documentary source from the time that you're writing about, let's say you're writing about 1920, the year 1920 in a person's life, if you have a journal from that year, from the person, and they're writing every night about how things look to them, you can go and talk to their child who was 10 years old in 1920, or 15 or 20 even. If you present them with their, often in this case, their parent or sibling or uncle or somebody's journal of that moment, they're appalled. It doesn't square even your own journal right now. If you look back at your own journal from 1972, it's like as you said about looking at your own memoir. It's as if a stranger lived this life, told these stories.
Yeah.
So we're all strangers in a way to our own past, and the thing that the biographer does is he or she they go and look at all of this life and begin to start knowing it better, really, than anyone. If they're good, they know it better in the end than anybody who even was in the story, even the main character.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the goal. I think for me, by the way, following on what you said about, and I think it's why I asked the question about what is the only way to play it, is that I struggled much as you did with fiction, with writing fiction, with too many possibilities. I could never, when fiction worked for me, it was because I was writing specifically to a story that I somehow understood already and knew where I was going. I often would write endings first, but endings in the end were always so difficult for me, especially in shorter fiction, that I didn't understand it. It didn't come from an internal gyroscope within me. I just felt, wow, I don't know what to do. That's why, in some ways, biography became a form that I absolutely felt natural at. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. They die.